And we're back. I want to talk a little bit about TikTok today. We're going to talk about the talk. And while TikTok and Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts are they're definitely taking up a majority of the type of media that people are consuming, we as podcasters have, honestly, in my mind, a pretty significant advantage. And if you've ever looked at TikTok, you'll see that it is probably the lowest form of IQ, lowest effort type of content out there on the internet. And I had a post last week on Twitter, and I also put it on LinkedIn too for some reason. But I said, in a world where social media and Hollywood is becoming increasingly focused on low effort, short, mindless content to encourage the infinite scroll, I'm very bullish on the creators and consumers of long-form, high-intelligence content. Those are the people that will be worth reaching long-term. So I think creating long-form podcasts that are informative as well as entertaining, I can't discount the entertainment factor that plays into this. You can't, a very information-dense podcast, like you think of the Lex Fridman podcast, those can be tough to get into. They cater to a very specific and niche audience. So there has to be some kind of entertainment factor in there. But I think that podcasting wins out in the long term. And this doesn't mean that you shouldn't be sharing your podcast on those places. On the podcast that I work on, YouTube Shorts is primarily where I'm putting a lot of the extra content. I haven't been on TikTok. It's sort of a personal thing for me to not be on TikTok just because I think it's a waste of time. But I think it's valuable if you can use it just to promote your show. And what's interesting is we had an interesting kind of tidbit on this when Jag, Matt, and I recapped Podcast Movement on our Podcast Super Friends show, which the link is in the description if you want to check that out. But the discussion was built around, does having short form video drive people to your podcast? That's a good question. Jag had the opinion that it's harder to. Well, I think he had that opinion. I'm not totally sure. Sorry, Jag, if I'm misrepresenting you. But it seems like the conversion funnel of I post something on TikTok to get you to like it, to enjoy that content, and then how much do you have to enjoy it and how good does that content have to be to get you to go to my profile, click on the link to my podcast, go to Spotify or Apple or Google or YouTube, pick an episode of my show, and then listen to it, and then subscribe to my show or follow the show on one of those podcasting platforms. That's a lot of steps for people to do. And as I said at the top, in a world where we're encouraging the infinite scrolling through low effort, mindless content, it's hard to assume that that is a good strategy. So why would we be on YouTube Shorts? Why would we be on Instagram Reels? Why would we be on TikTok? It's really just brand awareness. Does it really matter if they're downloading your podcast or if they just follow you on TikTok and like all of your videos? They're still consuming your content. You could still consider them a fan. You could still consider them a listener. They're just not listening to the full-length episodes. So what advantage do you have as a podcaster over the TikTokers of the world? The advantage that you have is you're creating long-form content. You're maybe putting together an hour show. In this case, will probably be 10, 12 minutes. The TikTokers are limited. They can only do up to, 2 minutes on TikTok, maybe 1 minute, 30 seconds. On Instagram, it's 70 seconds. And on YouTube Shorts, it's a hard cap at 60 seconds. And if you're making content exclusively for that platform, there's not a lot of places you can share that. You're really kind of siloed to those places, to TikTok, to Instagram Reels, to YouTube Shorts. Podcasters, on the other hand, we're not siloed to shit. We can take all of this really long content. You can chop it up into 60-second videos. You can take even a 10-minute episode. That's 10 clips you can turn it into. Granted, not all of those clips are going to be fantastic, but you can find 2 or 3 really great clips from your podcast and share it to those other platforms. The TikTokers can't do that. They can't stitch together all of their TikToks, which, again, consumed in only audio form would probably make no sense. They can't take 10, 12 TikToks, even 60 TikToks, and turn that into an hour-long podcast to be consumed. That just doesn't make any sense. It's a pool analogy. We can play in both ends of the pool. The TikTokers are relegated to the shallow end of the pool. We, on the other hand, have been training, okay? We can play in the deep end. We've got that long-form content, and we can also chop up that long-form content and go play in the kiddie pool and go play in the shallow end. And that's the advantage that you have over the TikToker kids. Now, do you want to be on those platforms? It's totally up to you. Like I said earlier, it's a very difficult question to try and answer of, does having a larger presence on that, well, I guess if you have a large presence anywhere, it's going to drive a certain percentage of people to your podcast. But for the sake of argument, the majority of the people here, including myself, we don't have a massive audience. So going over to TikTok, is that going to move the needle at all? Maybe. But I think that having the ability to take our long form content and create short form content out of it puts you at a much higher advantage than someone that can only do short form content. So bear all that in mind. I think those places are valuable to an extent. Again, I don't think it's going to push the needle for your overall actual Spotify or Apple or Google podcast downloads, but it does help increase brand awareness. It will open your show up to new people. And if that even converts one person, then maybe it's worth it for you. So it's something to consider. If you're not following the show already, please do that on whatever platform you're consuming this on. Go subscribe on YouTube. You can also follow me on Twitter, or you can subscribe to my weekly newsletter. If you want to do any one of those things, or all of them, you can go find links to all of those places in the show notes below. Thank you again for tuning in. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you next week.